Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing really well. Today I'm really excited to share with you another Pan Those Eyeshadows update. This one is coming a little bit later than they have throughout the remainder of the year. I am filming for the first time in like 2 weeks. It kind of feels weird, but in a great way. I'm really excited to sit down and share today's video with you. And yeah, why don't we just get right on freaking into it? I don't really want to blabber on too much, but this Project Pan is one that was started by Alexi. I will of course have her details in the description box as I always do. And this project has just been an absolute treat for me over the last few years as I've been working on my project panning journey. This has just been such a core experience for me, and I've had so much fulfillment and so much joy out of doing this project pan and exploring my eyeshadow collection in this way where I randomize eyeshadows and I try to hit pan on as many as I possibly can. It truly is that simple, but it is so effective and so fun for me. Additionally, I'll leave a few other creators down in the description box if you enjoy this type of content and you want to check out others. I highly recommend just searching it here on YouTube, but I will leave a few other creators down in the description box for you to check out as well. But let's get on into the color story and let's talk about my progress over these past maybe like 5 weeks since my last update. Here we have all 6 shades that I've been reaching for swatched out all together. This makes a stunning color story. I was really excited to dive into using all of these shades together and to create some really fun neutral and green leaning kind of looks with this color palette. It really is very, very pretty. I have no words other than how overjoyed I was to be working with these over this past month. So you will see in all the looks I'm gonna share while I talk about these shadows that I wore a ton of green, a lot of green, and green is my favorite eyeshadow color, so that was absolutely a treat for me. But yeah, you will see lots and lots of green due to this gorgeous color story. Now, I typically like to talk about these in order of how they're swatched out here, which is order of basically when they were rolled into the project, whatever is the oldest in the rotation. However, I'm gonna mix it up just for today's update and talk about this shadow first actually, because it was my least used shadow. So I just kind of want to get it over with. It came from my Fenty Beauty Galaxy palette, which is a stunner, long unavailable. It was a limited edition palette forever ago, but it still is one that I really enjoy. This shade is called Extraterrestrial, and I'm really disappointed in myself because I was really excited about this like green gold shifty color with a bit of a smoky base. I was excited to play with this, but now that the days are longer and brighter and it definitely is feeling much more like summer here, I just haven't found myself reaching for it. In fact, I only reached for it 2 times. So it doesn't look at all different at this point. That's it right there. Sorry, this palette is always so difficult to show off, but it's that shade right there. It doesn't look at all different. I don't even know if I have looks to share with you. I'm gonna have to filter through all of my pictures, but yeah. So let's just get that out of the way. Let's move on to the other 5 shades that I've been focusing on because that was sad. I will remedy that in the coming month and I will have more looks and more uses to share with you in my next update. Most definitely. All that aside, let's hop on into the remaining 5 shades. I do have much more significant progress to share with you on these ones. So the top 2 shadows here, they both come from my Natasha Denona Metropolis palette actually. One is one that I had hand selected for myself. I decided a couple months ago that I was going to have an option to hand select a shade to focus on. So I selected Orium, which is this second color right here. It's a beautiful green gold kind of color, duochrome, shifty, delicious, transformative shadow. It's such a beautiful shade. And then in the exact same update, I actually had rolled in this shade called Royal, which comes from the palette as well. It's a cream to powder, matte, emerald, gorgeous, rich green shade. Let's talk about Royal first up here. This gorgeous shade I was able to reach for 14 times since my last update, which is a very steep number for myself. I know I had a little bit of extra time, but still 14 uses is pretty substantial to me. So I was able to reach for this a grand total of 32 times so far in this project, and here is where it's at right now. As you can see, I hope from that distance, there's a tiny fleck of pan in there. And I definitely feel like there's a bit of a crater happening in here because this was a shadow that I used primarily as like a liner, as a kind of deepening up sort of shade. So I was using more targeted brushes when I was reaching into this. But I finally hit pan on that 30-second use of this shadow, and that is so great. And Orium I reached for 8 additional times since my last update, which brings me to a grand total of 19 uses throughout this project. So even though I had it in as long as Royal, I was not reaching for it as consistently. However, through those 19 uses, I was actually able to hit pan on it. I know it's not easy to see from there, but here you go. There's a little fleck of pan right in the middle. This one is much more evenly worn. It isn't as much of like a crater kind of into the product itself, but it's more of a like nice even slope because I would wear this pretty much all over the lid all the time. So it did require a little bit more building as opposed to precision. And so that's how I was able to hit pan on it in those 19 uses instead, because I just love to be bathed in Orium. But yeah, I'm really happy to see that this palette looks so well loved now. Not only do I have 3 pans in here, but in this past month, I was able to hit pan on 2 shades. So moving it down the line right here, I want to talk about this shadow next. This is kind of like a metallic taupe meets bronze kind of color. It comes from the ColourPop Pretty Much palette, which again is one that is no longer available. That is the story for most of my eyeshadow palettes that we talk about in this project pan, but it is the shade called It Me. And it is one that I had hardly reached for prior to rolling it into this project because it's not the most special metallic in my opinion. Yes, it's a good kind of neutral shade, but not something that really caught my eye. I am wearing it today on the inner portion of my lid as well as on the inner portion of my lower lash line with a bit of a like warmer kind of metallic color to complement it on the outer portion of the lid. And I'm really liking the way that this looks. I did generally prefer to wear it with more neutral looks like today's. And I have to pull up my numbers. I have no idea what the numbers are on this one. So I've reached for it 8 times since my last update, which is really good because previously I had only reached for it 5 times in the first month that I had it in this project. So I've used it now a total of 13 times in this project pan. So this is what it's looking like today. I do have it depotted into this little quad, and yeah, I have hit pan on it. Today was the day that I hit pan on it. Similar to Orium, this is a formula that I did need to really build up. It takes a lot of work to get the impact that I want from it. Otherwise, it can appear like a very sheer satin kind of color, and that's just not my vibe. I'm going for full-on metallics all the time. So yeah, it takes a little bit of building. It definitely requires a glitter glue, and yeah, that's how I was able to hit pan on it in those 13 uses. That's what it's looking like now. And I was surprised to have hit pan on it today, actually. I have found with the ColourPop metallics in my kind of experience that I am able to hit pan on them kind of in that like 10 to 15, maybe approaching 20 uses kind of range. However, when it comes to the mattes, they take at least 30 uses to hit pan on because they're just pressed very differently, they perform very differently, and they have very different kind of pigmentation levels. The metallics require a lot more building, and their mattes are like full-on pigment right from the hops. So yeah, I didn't really know what to expect with this one. However, now that I've panned a few ColourPop pressed powder shadows in this sort of format, I have come to realize that they don't take me incredibly long, which is good. I think that's really good because I'd love to see my ColourPop shadows get more love and more use and look more used as well. Next up is this shade that you may not even be able to see really well on camera actually. It is this kind of like soft peach gold shade with a pinky shift to it. It comes from my Urban Decay Born to Run palette. Again, no longer available, but it's the shade Blaze from this palette right here. So since my last update, I've actually reached for it 20 times. Today I'm wearing it on the tops of my cheekbones. I don't know if you can see that pinky shift, but I've been really enjoying this shade as a face highlight. And I also have it basically from the top of my eyeshadow, like where the brown ends on my lid. I have it right up to my brow bone for this full-on metallic from like lash line to brow bone situation. And I am loving the way that it looks. Since my last update, I've reached for it 20 times, which brings me to a grand total of 33 uses in this project pan. And here is Blaze right here. I have hit pan on it. I did hit pan on it actually after 18 uses this month, but decided to reach for it a few more times because I have been really enjoying it on the cheeks specifically. So the pan is quite sizable in here because I was using a highlighter brush in order to apply it to the face. And I do feel like it's a nice kind of more of a valley versus a like targeted kind of pan. And that's because of the ways that I've been using it, applying it with a large brush in order to use it on a greater surface area. And I've just been really enjoying it. I did not know that this was such a nice shadow. So it's been a treat to have this in this project and to focus on it and to get to know it and to get to enjoy it. And I'm loving how well loved this palette is looking through this journey as well. So happy I'm gonna be rolling this out, but have been really enjoying reaching for Born to Run in a way that I had not expected because it's never been a favorite in my collection by any stretch of the imagination. But lately it's been coming around to being something that I've really valued having in my routine, and that is a great feeling for me. And last but not least, let's kind of like leapfrog from Blaze over Extraterrestrial. We'll get into this shade right here, which again is one that I'm pretty sure is not even recognizable on camera as being a shadow. However, this is one that I rolled in my last update. It comes from my Auric Entice duo. It's the Smoke Reflect duo, and it's the powder shadow component. I do not have my cream or liquid shadows in my spreadsheet to be rolled into this project pan, but I like to include anything that I consider to be a single shadow. So the shadow component of this is a single shadow in my collection. Anyways, I have been really enjoying reaching for this over this past few weeks. It has been such a fun kind of topper shadow to integrate into many looks. Today I have it on my inner corner, and I also have it just in the center of the lid, kind of bridging that lighter taupey color to the more warm bronze shade on my lid, and to offer a little bit of a halo as well. Really like the way that this looks. However, it has proven to be something that's a little bit more challenging to reach for in terms of its texture. I always need a glitter glue, and I often prefer to apply this using my finger so that I can get a more uniform application. It's made to go with a cream shadow, but I've been flexing it hard and trying to use it with other types of formulations, other types of products, and I've reached for it 15 times since my last update. So yeah, or since I rolled it in. So yeah, it's been getting a ton of use from me. It does look really well loved, but because this is something that's a bit newer in my collection, I brought it into my life, I'd say in November. It would have been in November. Yeah, that makes sense. I don't want to hit pan on this yet. So I have decided that seeing as today is the 15th use, I am going to be rolling it out of this project pan because that is my threshold. That's what I have to achieve as a minimum in order to roll something out of this project. That's not to say that I don't love this product. I'm just not quite ready to try to hit pan on it. So I'd like to give something else the opportunity to be rolled into this project instead, with the goal of hitting pan on something else. So yeah, I didn't want to preface this video by saying that I was rolling out 5 shadows, but yeah, we're rolling 5 shadows out of the 6 focus shades in today's update, which is wild. But I think that's in part because I did have a little bit of extra time since my last update. I kind of pushed off this update because I just haven't had time to sit down and film. And because these have been such beautiful shadows and textures and palettes to reach for that have complemented one another and have just been so fun for me based on my style and my preferences. So this color story really just allowed me to be able to be very successful this past month in this project pan. So we're gonna be rolling 5 new shades into this project. 4 of which are gonna be randomized, which is sometimes a little bit scary to get into a pretty much fully new color story. And 1 I'm going to select on my own. I do have a few shadows kind of in mind at the moment, but I'm gonna wait to see what I roll in to be a little bit more selective with what I bring into this project pan. So let's do the freaking roll-ins. So since doing my declutter, I did eliminate all of the eyeshadows that I decluttered from my collection, from my spreadsheet, and I have put everything again into the Tiny Decisions app. Now, one question that I did get previously, and I'd like to just address here, is once I've kind of used the shadow 15 times and I've elected to roll it out, like this Auric one right here, I don't add it into the spreadsheet immediately, so I can't roll it in back to back. However, next update, it will be in my kind of Tiny Decisions wheel again as an eligible shadow to roll in the future. I don't think it's likely that I would roll this in again this coming month or next month or whatever, but I like to just leave it out of the options so that I can take a brief break. But yeah, let's just roll in the 4 new shadows. So the first selection is going to be, ooh, yes, for my Nabla Soul Blooming palette. I am wearing one of the shades from that palette right now, and so that makes me really excited because I was considering rolling that in on my own. And then my next selection is going to be, oh my goodness, Elf & Jay Kissa To The Rescue palette. The shade is called Pepper. I cannot even believe that I never even put that together, that there's an eyeshadow in this palette called Pepper, and we just adopted a dog and we named her Pepper. That's not how we figured out the name for our Pepper, but when we were trying to figure out a name for her, I did say to Patrick, maybe I should go through my eyeshadow palettes and like look for fun words, and I never ended up doing that. Okay, anyways, I digress. Anyways, so my 4th shade is going to be, yes, a great shadow, a great option to roll in place of the shade Orium. I was considering rolling this in as my hand-selected shade. This is ColourPop Tea Garden. Yes, this is shaping up very well, isn't it? And then my final new roll-in is going to be from the Juvia's Place, the Magic Mini, the shade Buzzo. Buzzo? I'm not sure how to pronounce that, and I'm fairly certain that is a green. I don't know. I'm really excited to get on into my palettes and share with you these new roll-ins, as well as my hand-selected 5th shadow to roll into this project as well. So the Nabla Soul Blooming was the first one that I had randomized. I randomized the shade Bolero. I think that's either a brown matte or it's the coral matte. And if it's the coral, I'm super stoked for it. Yes, it is. It is. I'm so excited for that because I've been reaching for the coral in Born to Run a ton and have been loving it for this time of year. So this is Bolero right here. I don't have significant progress on it, and that's not to say that I haven't used this a lot. In fact, I have used this a bunch. These mattes are just hyper pigmented, really, really rich, and they kind of blend infinitely, so you don't need a lot. So I imagine this is gonna take me quite some time to be able to actually use until I'm able to hit pan on it, and I am totally okay with that. Just seeing them swatch together, I'm already excited for this. I think it's gonna look really good with Extraterrestrial from Fenty, so that is a great start to the new roll-ins. And then my next roll-in, I believe, was this one. I can't remember the order, but I believe it was the Elf & Jay Kissa shade Pepper, which is just like meant to be. How freaking special is that? Fairly certain it's a red shade, but let's take a peek together. Yes, it's a red. My palette is kind of busted looking, and so you can't actually see the shade name right there. The texture on this is really nice. I must admit though, the reds in this palette are probably my least used because the pigmentation is not outstanding. It did take a few swipes in order to get it to this point, but I do think this is going to be a really good shadow to use as kind of like a deepening shade to add a little bit of warmth to looks as well. And it translates definitely as more of like a terracotta in the swatch, which is really kind of versatile for me and my own sort of eyeshadow preferences. So looking forward to reaching for that. And my next randomized shadow comes from my singles palette right here. and it's the shade Tea Garden from ColourPop. I was considering rolling this in on my own because I just think it's a good like rolling Orium out, rolling this one in as an alternative. I just feel like that works so well. This is very similar to Orium, if not a little bit of a better kind of formula, to be honest. This is it right here. And in the swatch, you'll see it leans a little bit more warm. And the green shift is a little bit more apparent, but I think this is a little bit of a better formula because it does not have the same fallout. That's because it's more of a true metallic versus a metallic with glitter particles running through it. So it's a little bit easier to reach for, and it looks much more refined on the lids. However, I do find that Orium has more transformative kind of properties to it because of its kind of almost sheerness. But anyways, I'm excited to reach for Tea Garden. I freaking love this shadow so much. And yeah, it's gonna look great with that coral. It's gonna look great with extraterrestrial. It's gonna look great with the red underneath of it. This is just shaping up to be ultra perfection right now. And Tea Garden has a really great dip in it already. I have used this extensively over the time that it's been in my collection. And because it's so high impact, I don't need like a ton of it. I don't really need to build it up tremendously to get the look that I want from it. But there is most definitely a great dip happening in there. And for the fourth and final randomized roll-in, I still have to figure out what I'm bringing in on my own terms. I can't even like grapple with what's going on, how great this color story already is. So I don't know how I'm gonna be able to top it with my own hand-picked one. But anyways, my final shadow that I had selected came from the Juvia's Place, the Magic Mini palette. Pretty sure the shade Buzo is the emerald green, and yeah, it is. It's a stunner. I've actually reached for this a few times in tandem with Royal, which just rolled out, and I freaking love it. This is such a beautiful, fresh, rich, jewel-toned green shade. I think this palette is just such a fun combination of different types of tones, textures, everything. So I'm really looking forward to reaching for this palette as well, just in general. And I have found myself wanting to reach for it as of late. So this is just, it's like it's meant to be. This is all just meant to be. There's a swatch of that new shade and bam, it is a beaut. It is so pretty. Look at that green. I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled with what this is looking like. However, I still need to pick out my own selection. I spent kind of a long time going through my collection just now, and I have to come to some sort of conclusion. I have to decide on something. So I decided I just want to go for something nice and easy that can kind of pair with all of these shades, but also can just be easy, super easy for me. And it would be nice to see a pan in this palette right here. So I figured we'll just work on this. This is the Catrice X Iman. This is the Bronzed AF eyeshadow palette. I got this in PR a couple years back, and it's a beautiful little palette. I don't think it's available anymore, but I have gotten really great use out of it, and I think it's a really cute little color story. 9 pans here, but I don't have any pans in this palette yet, so I'd like to remedy that. And I'd like to work on this shade called Sunset right here. This is kind of like a caramel, kind of warm, mid-toned brown shade. And I think it's gonna pair really well with the metallics that are currently in this project pan. But it's also one that I think I can wear like as a one and done, very light eyeshadow. And I just think it's a really pretty shade. So I'm looking forward to not only reaching for that shadow in tandem with these focus shades, but also just reaching for this palette as a whole, because I think this is such a cute little palette that gets oftentimes overlooked in my collection. And it'd be nice to see a pan in here. It would be really nice to see a pan in pretty much all of my eyeshadow palettes. That would be the dream. So we're gonna work towards that. We're gonna work towards that now. But yeah, so this color story is pretty lit. I'm looking forward to hearing what kind of looks you recommend that I should create. What kind of looks would you create with these focus shades here? But yeah, that is everything for today's video. Thank you so much for watching and for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye everyone.